Oh, this is so stupid. I recorded this whole video yesterday, and it took me like an hour of just talking to the camera, and I didn't double check to make sure that things were in focus because I have no idea what I'm doing. So I swear to God, if this is out of focus, then that's it. I've been really trying to convince myself to get back into making videos and stuff, so this is the first video to start doing that. And one thing that I keep getting asked about on Twitch and from various people that might reach out to me is how much do commercial artists or artists that work, on projects like Magic the Gathering or for Riot Games or Blizzard or name any big company or whatever, how much do they get paid to work on these projects? Now, I can only speak for, like I said, people that have worked for these type of companies or in games or movies or small like tabletop game commissions or indie companies or whatever. I can't really talk about how much like artists that are doing like fashion design or whatever are making because it's not my world. It's not what I'm used to, and I just don't have the numbers for it. So I always talked about jobs in like a tier sort of a way of there being like a like a lower tier and mid tier and high tier jobs, but that tiering like can be broken down into a bunch of other sort of tiers. For simplicity's sake, that's kind of how I'm going to organize things in this video. So the lowest tier, like first tier, although again, like with everything, it varies widely, so bear with me, would be like small private commissions. That being said, I've gotten private commissions that pay very well. I know other people that have gotten private commissions that pay insanely well. But for most people starting out, your livelihood usually depends on very small commissions from, private direct message, random people that want to hire you for their D&D character or paint my baby's face or paint my dog that died. I don't know, random jobs like that. This is what most of my career was for the first 3 years. Those jobs range anywhere from $0 to $100, which isn't great when you think about it. It's very difficult to try and make a living when, you're only getting paid $25 to paint this one creature or whatever for this random guy. Oh, hi, buddy. Oh, hi, buddy. You can't be up here. I'm filming a video. Can you say hi to the YouTube? Say hi to the YouTubers. We're one of them now. That means someday I might get in a fight with Floyd Mayweather. Second tier tends to be indie companies, very small companies that maybe don't even have any employees. It's just one person that kind of contracts out work, or it's tabletop game companies. Now that price range is anywhere from $100 to $500. This is probably the tier that surprises people the most because most people think of, companies like Wizards of the Coast or like Paizo that make Pathfinder or Fantasy Flight games, and they think like they have a huge selection of games, they're incredibly popular, they're a big company. Why are they only paying $100 to $500? That's the nature of this business. To get more precise with prices, I worked with Pathfinder for a good 2 years. They're a great company for me and sent me a lot of work, and I'm super grateful for it. They paid $150 for a character splash piece, which is just a standalone single character, and they paid $300 for an illustration. I think they had another tier that was like $450 for a full page illustration or a book cover or something, but I never got one of those. And I can't say exactly how much those same type of images pay for something like Dungeons and Dragons or these other companies. It kind of varies a little bit. But like I said, it is usually within that range of $100 to $500. So the next tier is mobile games, and what I call AA. Is that like a AA game studio? Is that a thing? So these type of jobs range anywhere from $1,000 to like $2,500. That's kind of like a rough estimate because things start to get real, things start to vary up a little bit at this stage. Because there are some mobile games that are just kind of getting off the ground, and maybe it's a smaller company and they haven't had any sort of smash hits yet, and maybe they are going to be one of the indie companies that can only pay like a couple hundred to a few $100s. But then you get other mobile game companies that maybe they have a few released titles, they're doing pretty well on the app or mobile market or whatever, and they're able to start paying, into the thousands, probably hire out an outsourcing studio or a selection of artists to do some contract work with them. And then the final tier is your big daddy warbucks out there, the AAA game companies. I'm talking about Activision and Blizzard and Riot and Nintendo. Sure, we'll throw Nintendo in there. I don't know what they pay. Now these companies, I just set it to $2,500 and the sky is the limit because after $2,500, I mean, there are companies that, you very well could only get paid about that much to work for someone like Blizzard on a particular project. But depending on the project that you're actually hired out to do for them, they could pay a lot more money. To give an example, something like a Hearthstone illustration, currently I get paid about $1,200 per illustration. But if I was to be hired by some other part of the company to work on some, major key marketing illustration or something that would be seen on the Battle.net app, that's going to pay way more than just a Hearthstone card. And that kind of brings me into the next subject that I want to talk about, which is that prices can vary pretty widely within the type of job that you're wanting to do. So let's go back to talking about those tabletop game companies, okay? Because a lot of those require card illustrations. And card illustrations are one of those things that, there's just a huge variety of how much that they'll pay. So, for instance, I know people that have talked about Fantasy Flight games that at one point in time, a few years ago, they paid roughly $100 per card illustration. Now, if you compare that to numbers that I've seen for, some of the biggest paying card illustrations, I think Legends of Runeterra right now is the biggest one I can think of. I've heard some people making several $1,000s per illustration. And so there's huge disparity there. Even something like Magic the Gathering, which is literally the world's most popular card game in the world, they pay $1,000 per card illustration. That surprises some people and also really excites some people. It kind of depends who you are. I mean, for me, for the longest time, $1,000 card illustration, I was like, yes, that's amazing. But since starting to do work with Hearthstone that pays $1,200 to $1,500, we're doing work with Legends of Runeterra, which is literally paying, $3,000 and up. It's not as good of a sell. And it's not just card illustrations. There's disparity in all types of jobs that you might get. I mean, let's look at splash art, for instance. Splash art is one of those things that I feel like a lot of people that are starting to kind of come up in the art industry, that's what they're used to seeing. They kind of came up on League splash art. I've been paid $800 for a splash illustration, but I've also heard of people that have been paid literally $15,000 for splash illustrations. It's a huge, wide margin. And that margin comes from all sorts of things. It's the company that you work with, it's the time limit you have on the job, it's the credibility of you as an artist. All of those factor in with how much you can actually negotiate or how much the company is just willing to upfront offer that artist to do this particular job. Even something like character concept art can also have a huge disparity. I think the cheapest that someone has hired me to do character concepts was probably $450, and it was this kind of one-off gig through an outsourcing studio. But then the most I probably made for concept art was, $8,000 for characters also done for an outsourcing studio, but for a much bigger client. So the other thing that we can talk about is day rates and hourly rates. So the first time that I was exposed to hourly rates was actually my first studio job that I was given. And I think at the time, roughly the hourly rate that they paid me as a contractor was $25 an hour. Now, I don't know if that's the average. Some people think that's incredibly low, and some people think oh good, that's an amazing hourly rate. Since then though, I think my hourly rate now on average is anywhere from $50 to $80 an hour. It really depends on the type of gig and how much I have on my plate. Day rates is another thing that when I was asked for my first day rate, I panicked. I reached out to every artist that I knew that could give me some advice and was what is an average day rate? I'm freaking out right now. The first day rate that I ever got hired on was $250, which at the time I was blown away by. I was oh my God, I can make $250 a day just working on this stuff. That's incredible. Since then, just due to the nature of things, I've been getting hired by higher paying clients. I've just gotten better with my work in general, and so now my average day rate is anywhere from $450 to $500. And I really don't know if that's high or if that's low, but the highest day rate that I've heard comes in the movie industry. I think the highest one I heard was an artist that was making $1,500 a day working on movies, and I doubt that that's even the highest that exists. So most of what I talked about was you've got hourly, you've got day rate, and then you've got asset-based rate, which means that if you're hired to do an illustration, this is just flat out how much the illustration is going to end up paying you. And it's great to have all these different, scenarios of okay, I get paid this much per day, this much per hour, but how many actual hours, how many actual days, and how many assets can you actually take on, and how much does that accumulate? Basically what I'm saying is how much do you get paid annually? And this is super dependent on who you are and what your needs are and what you're willing to work on. In my own case, when I'm freelancing, I usually have anywhere from 3 to 4 clients at any one time. I might be doing 3 illustrations for Magic the Gathering, I might be doing 1 splash piece for another company, and I might be doing another illustration or 2 for another company. And on average, companies work within 2, 4, or 6 week deadlines. So I kind of have this constant like overlapping, fluctuating flow of clients coming in and going out. To be a little bit more precise, I'm just going to use myself as an example, and I hope that's cool with people. I'm just doing it because I'm literally the only person that I have the exact numbers for this. My first year that I was freelancing, I was primarily going off of those small commissions or those tabletop game or indie game company commissions. And that year annually, I think I made about $18,000, and that was not the greatest situation at the time for us. Luckily, later in that year or sometime in the next year, I ended up starting to do work with Smite, and they paid a lot better. And I was also being contracted out by a little bit more higher paying outsourcing studios. So the second year into freelancing, I think I doubled what I made, and I was making about $36,000, maybe $40,000. 1 year later, I just kept building up my portfolio and I kept building out my outreach to clients, and I think I made around $60,000. This trend continued upwards until this last year. I think how much I made between working full-time at an outsourcing studio as well as taking on freelance on the side, I made about $140,000. And that wasn't like grinding every day and every night, you know, working a whole bunch. It was most of the time, it was just average working hours where I'd work about 8 hours a day. So I'm sorry if some of this isn't as precise as some people would like it to be. I know that it just varies a lot between different artists. I think the only thing that you can really say for certain is how much these certain clients pay for these specific assets that they ask for. But I know that's something that was kind of a huge mystery to me when I was coming up in the art industry, and I was really nervous about it because it would kind of help a little bit if I knew every day that I'm painting these fantasy characters, if whether or not Magic the Gathering really actually pays a livable wage. So I appreciate all you guys watching this. I'm very sorry that I haven't made a video in like 2 years. I moved to new house. I've been freelancing a lot, doing a lot of work, and I'm horribly insecure. But I got a cool Shaman King poster.